Hey guys, just a quick little discussion over something that's very, it's widely talked about, and obviously it's dealing with theology. Um, Many Christians are under the belief, obviously, I'm going to be talking about Pauline doctrine, Trinitarian doctrine. Many Christians, they're under the belief that you need a sacrifice from God for God to have forgiveness over you. And it's usually based on many verses from the Bible that are taken out of context. Um, Interestingly, when Paul quotes the Old Testament, I give you a challenge. Go and check out. Usually, you'll have the footnotes telling you exactly what he's trying to quote, and it'll tell you what part of the Old Testament. Go to that part of the Old Testament and test it out. I think most people don't do that, and you will see that many times he's misquoting verses. He's taking things out of context. He's changing some words up, obscuring the meaning, and it's obviously it's not an honest thing to do. It shows some deceiving going on, and I know this is a big accusation for someone that's so important for such a huge major religion, but you can test it out yourself. It's not like we need to go into like a huge, deep conspiracy here. The history is there. The history shows that uh, not only is he misquoting or probably misinterpreting things from the Bible, but also he's not being accepted by the disciples themselves. And you can see that in the book of Acts, where he's having some conflicts with the disciples, and they then agree on, in the Council of Jerusalem, they agree on several rulings for new converts that were Gentiles. And that was pretty much their agreement. The disciples uh, with James the Just, and now then Paul. So what's interesting, by the way, James is the what would be another son from the Virgin Mary. Uh, so what is interesting is that that history is there, and you can actually see it in the Bible itself. Once again, it's in the book of Acts. You can find this conflict that they're having between each other, and pretty much the label is that Paul's church is um, it's the the church of um, there's pretty much Paul's church, and then there's the Jerusalem church, which is where the disciples were with James the Just. And basically, their perspective was, who is this guy? As you know, many of y'all will know, Paul, he had a vision on his way to Damascus. He didn't know the disciples until years later, after Jesus had gone back to heaven. So then, for the perspective of the disciples, it was like they had lived with Jesus for so many years. They knew exactly what he was trying to teach. And then they see um, this person that used to persecute Christians, used to send them, used to, so you have this person, Paul, who used to persecute Christians, and now he's coming out of nowhere with something you're gonna have to believe in now. It's a vision. Um, and now he's going to teach us the faith. He's going to tell us what Jesus actually came here to say. What was his message? After this whole time, he never even met Jesus, never ate with him, and he had persecuted people that believed in him. Now, Paul, he uses this as like a reason to believe in him. And you'll find that it's very famously quoted that Paul's like, I used to persecute you guys. You know what I mean? Like, and look, I'm joining you guys. Believe in me. I mean, if I'm joining you guys, there's a huge reason. Uh, there's a good reason, and that reason is faith, and that's the reason I'm joining you guys. But remember, he didn't just join them. He didn't really join them. He created a sect within that religion, which divided the religion up. So when he says he converted to Christianity, he converted to Pauline Christianity. He did not convert to the Christianity of the disciples, because obviously he came with new ways of believing and different practices, and both churches were separated. They were not the same. The Jerusalem church still had many what what people would say, or what Paul would have said, like a characteristic of being Jewish. But see, the disciples and the tradition of the first Christians from the land of what was called Palestine in that time as well, um, it was preaching the law of Moses. He didn't he there's you can find it in Mark and Matthew, where Jesus is saying that he didn't come to abolish the law. Uh, and he came to fulfill it. And people stop there when they start quoting, and they're like, "Oh, but Jesus had already fulfilled everything." Not exactly, because you'll see that in the end of the verse, he's actually saying that until everything passes, including the heavens and the earth. So we're talking about the end of times. The law does not go away, or he was not abolishing that law. So interestingly, you'll find Paul with a very different way of viewing the religion, where now the law is cursed. We're free from the law. So you can find once again in the Bible this controversy between both churches, the Jerusalem church with the disciples and James the Just, and then Paul, which seems to have joined with Peter. So interestingly, in the book of James, written by James the Just, the leader of this Jerusalem church, the other son of Virgin Mary, it's a very short book. It probably has like 4 chapters in it. It's very short, and I recommend that you guys read it, because it's very different from everything else you can find in the New Testament. His message is much more direct, much simpler. Sounds like something that maybe was more related to Jesus' actual teachings. So it's like you'll find that James the Just, you can Google it. It's very easy. Like put Bible. Sorry about that. Put Bible, Book of James, and law. Google that, and you will find exactly what I'm talking about, where he starts talking about the law. He says that the law gives freedom. Okay, so now you got Paul. You got Paul with the law is cursed. Well, the law is a curse, and now we're free from that curse. And then you have James the Just saying that the law is what gives freedom. It's like it's more of a precious thing, and you will find with Jewish religion, that and their different denominations, that there is a great appreciation for the law. It was never seen as something that imprisons people. So there's this whole controversy here, because history shows you one thing, and what you see of the Christianity today, it's something else. And it doesn't stop there. as I was beginning the discussion, it was mostly dealing with what I was going to talk about, the Pauline doctrine and Trinitarian doctrine. But for us to understand this, we have to first understand the history. We have to understand the conflict between the Jerusalem church and Paul's church. Because if we don't understand that, we're just going to think that there was already a unified church when there wasn't. Um, Now, this video is getting really long, and I'm going to give a part two uh, that goes directly into now the doctrine of the Trinity and Paul's uh, doctrine of salvation. Uh, so, in part two, I will elaborate about the doctrine and its misconceptions. And For now, I'm just going to conclude, just in case you don't go to that other video. Um, Remember that there was a division in the church. It was started greatly by this figure, Paul. And that existed until the time when the Roman Empire had converted to Christianity. And they had made it a law, pretty much, little by little, like the Council of Nicaea, and it continued from like 325, and it just continued. There was more councils, and it just became like the law that this is the truth. Jesus is God, because he is a part of the Trinity, and salvation is through his blood. So the Roman Empire had adopted this theology, and they basically monopolized Christianity with that. When you have the government behind it, you know, uh, and that's when it starts with like canon law practice. So the reason why we have a Christianity that almost forgot all about the history of the Jerusalem church and the legacy of James the Just is because of the Roman Empire and their conversion. Um, Greatly has to do with that, and their influence even on the other areas like in Egypt. You know, so this does then influence the Coptic Church that comes from there. It's not just the Catholic Church and what came out of Rome. It's also where Rome had already established its authority. And obviously, this continues with the Protestant Reformation, that basically is the daughter of the Catholic tradition. They could try to, clean up the religion as much as they want, but when it came down to the actual manuscripts that they were depending on, what books they had agreed on having in the Bible, it does come back from the Roman times. And what was already agreed on in the Council of Nicaea and what was already the doctrine. Because there were other manuscripts or other gospels that were more Jewish sounding, but obviously they were not chosen. And so we need to question who was this group that had chosen them, these books. And many Protestants would like to believe that that only happened in the Reformation, and that's when they cleaned out what's called the Catholic Apocrypha, but not necessarily. It doesn't start there. It starts a long time ago with the Romans. The reason why we have these four Gospels, it has a lot to do with their tradition and what they had chosen for the religion. So once again, I will go a lot more deep into the concept of the Trinity, the salvation of the doctrine of Paul, and how it's confusing, it's unnatural, and it does not have any evidence in the Bible. It sadly, I know I don't like to give bad news, but you need to have some patience. Just bear with me, and we'll go over a lot of the proofs, um, and you'll see little by little exactly what I'm talking about. So have an open mind. You know, pray to God that He guides you to the right way, that He guides you to the truth. And I'll see you guys later. Part 2. Please give a like, comment down below, and subscribe.